Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunities that we have to serve, to work together as a community, to try to have good vision, wisdom in our decisions. We're grateful for those that are here this evening with us also in their presentations and their presence. Father, we ask for thy guidance. We ask for direction and inspiration in the decisions that we make. We do bless those who strive so hard for this community. Ask that we might be a part of it in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Would everyone please rise? Repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for participating in that with us. We'll move on to item 1, approval of the agenda.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the agenda as outlined. Looks like about 15 items.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Nice night.
Bellis tonight.
Granger, aye.
IBI.
Thank you. Announcements. We have a presentation, what we were made a video. Go with the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. In continuation of this project that we're working where we're trying to highlight and at least identify the great stories and the great people that are associated with Washington City. This is one that we just recently released, and if it's all right, we'll present that here.
Washington City is only as great as those who reside here, who make it great. And this is what we're made of.
So I'm Gina James, known by the kids as Mrs. James in Washington. I'm an elementary school counselor for Horizon Elementary. I came to Washington City specifically because I had finished my Master's of Education degree and I wanted to work in prevention. We spend our days with the kids teaching a section on respect, which of course includes respect to others, also includes bullying prevention, also includes building healthy relationship, and then we spend another about 7 or 8 weeks on resilience, how to be a strong person and how to face difficulties that we're all going to have trials in life. And we feel like these are the most important skills that kids learn as they're developing and changing and moving on.
So tell me what led you into becoming a teacher and going that direction with counseling?
I've always been a teacher. That's just what I've always, that's part of who I am. And no, my parents weren't teachers. And when I actually started in to finish up my master's, I was planning to go into hospital work. And so at the end of, just before I started the master's program, I had to do an intern class where I spent 6 weeks in a school and I spent 6 weeks at a hospital. And I quickly learned that I needed the hope that kids have.
How did you decide that Washington City was where you were going to end up versus, you know, any of the other communities in our county?
So the summer before we moved down here, our family had spent some time at the Rock and R Ranch. While we were there, there was a little family of kids that worked there and were running the ranch or working on the ranch. If you were to choose where to live down there, tell me where we should go. Like what, you know the area, where should we go? And without even hesitation, they said, Washington. You will find some of the greatest families in the world. So that's where we came. And we started looking here, and we pretty much exclusively worked here just because of the things that they had told us and said about the strong families that are in this area. And that's exactly what we found.
What you're doing is important and that it matters, and you see those changes that are taking place with these kids.
Yeah, so the kids literally see me hundreds of times from the time they start kindergarten till the end of 5th grade. And it's hard to let them go because you've really nurtured and helped them and worked with them through things. But one thing I learned quickly when I got to this level is that I was going to learn more from them than they taught me. And that was really awesome to me. Because as you watch them and they're pure, this isn't going to work, I'm going to tear this. And they're amazing, they are. And they teach us how to be better people. The days when they're leaving your classroom, and this happens often, when they leave and they just say, thank you so much for teaching me that. No one's taught me that before. It makes you realize, wow, that's really awesome. And one of the kids said yesterday as he was leaving, I love this lesson. Well, he's obvious a kid because I'm just giving them information, and he's a kid that loves that information. And then you hope that they take that foundational stuff and just say, yeah, I'm not going to do that because I know Mrs. James has already told me the damage it can do to me. So I love that part of it. And you get a lot of that. You get a lot of the feedback from the kids. Kids are very open, and they'll say, I've even had kids say, gosh, my mom's never taught me that. Thank you for teaching me that. But I often have kids say, hey, that's what my mom says, or that's what my dad says. When they say that, I stop and say, and your mom's a genius.
Washington City is only as great as those who reside here, who make it great. And this is what we are made of.
Thanks, Mayor. And I'm going to stop doing this because I'm going to lose count real quick, but we now only have 25,998 citizens, great citizens to go. So, but we appreciate Ms. James. What a great part of our community she is.
Thank you.
Is she here?
No, she probably doesn't even know this is going on. I don't know if she would want it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. We'll move on to item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Any to declare at this time? Okay, we'll move on to item 4, consent agenda. To approve the minutes from 9/26, 9/27, 10/10, 10/11, 10/24, and 10/25/17, and also the board audit report for October 2017. Anything to discuss on those 2 items?
Mayor, if there's no discussion, I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as is outlined, which is the approval of the minutes from 9/26, 9/27, 10/10, 10/11, 10/24, and 10/25, and also our October board audit report.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Nellis, aye. Turek, aye.
Thank you. Finance, quarterly update. Fiscal year 2018. Administrative Service Director, Kimberly Roosh. And interviewer.
That hopefully was a one-time deal, right?
I hope not. That was too good to let it just happen once.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Mayor and Council, thanks for the opportunity to come before you today. I'm going to zoom in on this here in just a little bit. We are going to be covering the first quarter of the current fiscal year, which is, we're going to look at July through September for the revenues and expenditures for the city. So one thing that I wanted to point out and be able to highlight for you is it's been actually a really strong quarter for us as we've rolled into the budget year, and our revenues. So if I can explain just a little bit, so maybe for the people who are following along too. So the graphing that I'm showing here, the full screen, is off of our financial dashboard that's available to all of our citizens. We upload the data on a monthly basis, and it can be found on the city's webpage on our finance site. And that we'll be kind of clicking through some of those items there. So the city's experienced a strong first quarter. We've had our total revenues are on target with budget. And so in the graph, most of the information that we display, we're looking at comparative information that will look at this column here is our current year. So we're looking at September for the current fiscal year. You're able to see, and it's running collective total. So what we have collected and spent from July through September, which is our first quarter, and it compares this first quarter to last year's first quarter and the prior year. So we have 2 prior year quarters that you can see comparisons on. And then on the budget, it's considered a prorated budget, which means it's looking at revenue and expenditures for only a 3-month period. If you took the total city budget, now you're only looking at 3 months worth. Okay, and so that's where it's kind of showing the comparative there. So if we were looking at that, this is again Washington City's total revenue and expenditures across all funds. So our expenditures we're looking at are below what we'd expect for the first quarter, and that's kind of normal. We'll talk about that as we kind of dip into it. And then our revenues are also below the first quarter projections, but again, also normal because we function under an accrual basis, a modified accrual basis of accounting, which means that we have several months of information that gets reported in the rears. So for example, for us, all our tax collections, by the time they come through the state and they come to us, we don't receive sales tax money until about 2 months behind. For the general fund, we'll skip over to that really quick and then I'll talk about that. But we basically just have revenues and expenditures that for the first quarter, you'd always expect it to be relatively mild, but based on that, we are doing well. And from the general fund standpoint, this is general fund revenues to expenditures. As you can see, historically, it's normal that you see our expenditures for the first quarter in excess of the revenues. Now, the biggest reason that drives that is that the general fund revenue is made up of 60% of taxes, sales taxes and property taxes. That makes up the bulk of our revenue for the general fund. And on the sales tax side of things, again, when you're looking at the first quarter, we've actually received a single month worth of distributions. We only have 1 month of revenue that reports on sales tax through the first quarter. And property taxes we don't collect. They don't start rolling in until about December. So we are right where we'd expect to be. Our sales tax collections, though, are up about 7% over last year. So we have a little bit stronger growth in that. And again, we do attribute it simply to added growth that's come into the county as a whole and different activities that drive people in to come shopping in Washington City. Okay. I'm going to... We're going to jump over and look at our enterprise funds for the city. The enterprise, let's jump at revenues versus expenditure comparison. So our enterprise funds is what makes up our water, sewer, power. These are our departments that function like a business. They charge rates that cover the costs of operating and so forth. So when we do our review for comparative purposes, we look at the operational revenues compared to expenditures. This allows us to look at the money we'd expect to have coming in a single year. So when we're looking at operational, we're not looking at impact fee collections that come in from the enterprise funds, and we're also not looking at capital outlay costs because we're looking at simply how is this particular view is just showing you the operational revenues versus the expenditures. So again, we are on target with where we would expect to be budget-wise. On the enterprise side, you will see the expenditures lag. Again, it's because you have large volumes of your expenditures that will report in the rear. So when we purchase water, when we purchase power, the billings that come for those report in basically a month behind. So when we're looking at that type of stuff, on the power side, those expenditures run 2 months behind. So you're only seeing 1 month worth of costs and things like that. So the first quarter, again, in most all of our departments is relatively neutral. There's just not a lot that's taking place because of the accounting and the way that comes in for that. But we are basically just where we would expect to be. We have seen the enterprise revenues are up over last year. The driving forces behind that, again, are growth. So building permits through the first quarter, we've issued 161 residential building permits. Last year, during the same time period, we'd only issued 106. So we're growing strong and fast right now in the city. And part of that the growth that has continued from last year as well. All the people that have moved in last year, those things attribute to increased revenues in terms of services that we're providing. The power and water departments did have rate increases last year, so you'll see increases as a result of that. The sewer fund, their growth isn't quite as strong. It's because we did a rate reduction last year in the sewer department. Okay, so our internal service fund, so an internal service fund just means that their sole purpose is that they're kind of providing services for the city. So for us, this is our fleet division, where we have all the maintenance of the city fleet that takes place and comes through there. So what we're just looking at again is revenues versus expenditure. We are, again, to an extent where we'd expect to be. There's nothing really surprising. Revenues are, again, down over last year. If you're looking at that, they're a little down from budget through the first quarter. Because it's an internal service fund, it directly correlates to the services that are needed. So when you see this, basically what you're seeing is we just had less maintenance and repairs during the first quarter of this year compared to the first quarter of last year, and so forth. So as you see, the expenditures are also reduced off of the budget as a result of that, because we're not having to buy certain supplies and things like that that we would have for maintenance. Our special revenue fund is where we account for our RAP tax collections that we have here. And so RAP tax, again, because it's a tax-driven revenue, through the first quarter, only seeing a single month of collection. So that's just 1 month worth of revenue that we have received. On the expenditure side, you're going to see this basically lie flat until January. So for our RAP tax, the council has designated that they will review applications for RAP tax funding. So RAP tax, I guess I can maybe explain for the people who might be listening. This is a tax that's collected, and it's can be specifically used for parks, recreation, arts, those types of services. And anyone who is part of a nonprofit group that does that type of work is eligible to come in and make an application to the city and request grant funding basically from that, as well as city projects for the parks and things like that. So we had our distribution in January, and at that time the council awarded money for Brigham's Playhouse, and then we also awarded money for the Veterans Park renovation for that first phase that's taking place. So the council won't hear again applications for that until January for any additional distributions, but we'll continue to collect the revenue. You'll continue to see expenditures flow out as the park project continues. As the quarters move forward. Let's see. So our capital project funds is where we account for capital projects that are only for the government related services. So this would be parks, streets, general services for buildings and things like that we have. The collection in terms of the revenue source for capital projects comes from impact fee monies. The money that comes in from streets, we do transfer the 0.25% highway tax that is received. 100% of those tax revenues get transferred over to the street capital project fund. That's where we account for this here. But that's where the revenue resources come to fund these projects. And then if there were any contributions from the general fund, those would be transferred to here too. The projects that we have this year that will come out of this, the bulk of it is debt service to pay for projects that we've had in the past. And then we have the Warm Springs Park and Trailhead is part of the funding of the capital projects for this current year. Our debt service fund, this is where we have our Coral Canyon Special Service District. This also houses the Municipal Building Authority and our general debt service fund. So this is basically for our governmental, so the general fund type services. This is where we house basically the debt that has been issued, and it shows the revenue that would come in and the expenses, debt service payments that are going out.
We don't show Coral Canyon separately.
I can show it separately. I'm showing it together as part of the debt service funds, but it's just the way I have the saved view. But for anybody who was interested, you can drill in and look at only the Coral Canyon Special Service District. If you want me to show you that right now, we can look at that too. So what you see is On the debt service funds, they come in and their funding source is simply transfers. Okay, so it's if we have a bond that's impact fee eligible, you have impact fee money that gets transferred in to cover those debt service payments. The Coral Canyon Special Service District is a little bit different. It's funded through a tax levy. It was a general obligation bond. Let me pull that up. So we're looking. Okay, so now we're looking at only the Coral Canyon Special Service District. Again, the reason that you see expenditures and virtually no revenue at this point is because it is property tax driven, and those collections won't start to roll in until December. But yet we have debt service payments that start being made in July. We do have reserves from the prior year collections so the cash flow is there, but the collections for this year in terms of the revenue that's expected for debt service, we won't see that start to come in until about December. And in general, that's why during this first quarter that you see a lot of times the expenditures, again, particularly for this, a lot of our debt service payments will come in. Typically for principal payments, we see those come in between July and December. So you have really a bulk of our costs for debt service hits us in this first quarter of the fiscal year, or the first half of our fiscal year. Okay. What's that? So I was probably kind of fast, but kind of what you might have expected. But what we did is just cover all of the major funds that we have within the city, kind of at a really high level. Again, with our transparency portal, you do have the ability to drill all the way in, even down to a transaction level. It's open. All the data is posted. It's available to the public for anybody who wants to see. Mayor and Council, you guys will receive an email that has the written analysis of our first quarter information, along with links that can take you in to look at the detail, as well as the actual budget status report. So that'll get emailed out to you tonight now that this has been presented. So if you have any questions, I can try to address those. But for the most part, I guess the key thing is that we are where we'd expect to be. And there's nothing that's out there concerning in terms of where we might finish for the end of the year. So.
That's always a good thing.
Okay.
I know I've had questions in the past, but it works for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Come in anytime. If you have questions, you can email me, you can call me. That goes for anybody who's out there. So thank you.
Any additional comments from Kimberly?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Move on to item 6, an update report from Buxton Economic Development. Cheyenne Robinson. Good to see you, Cheyenne. Did you just fly in today?
Yes, earlier today. Met with Roger, actually. Had a great meeting. Got to spend a little bit more time in Washington on this trip, so I'm really glad to have had the opportunity. And I'm thankful that you all are having us here today, Mayor, Council. Today I'm going to be sharing with you an update of where we are in our partnership. I'm going to keep it brief, so just let me know if there's any questions you'd like for me to dive in deeper into. But essentially, as you all know, you partner with us in February of 2016 to understand all of the conditions that are present to seek an actual program to recruit new retail. And as you know, recruiting retail is a long-term strategy. So we're implementing on those findings, leveraging our industry background, taking a proprietary approach, knowing how retailers are looking at your market, how they're determining where their next sites are going to be. But from our experience of working directly with those retailers, we've taken an identical approach to understanding your market from that retailer's perspective, knowing who your consumers are as customers for that retailer, knowing what your trade area is, which we'll talk about here more shortly, and providing you with a recommended strategy for success. So knowing the retailers that we need to be focused on and supporting you throughout those conversations with each of those companies. We'll talk more on where we are and some of those results and where we're looking to go from here. So first and foremost, we started in the industry over 23 years ago in site selection and market optimization. All of the logos that you're seeing here, we have a strategic partnership with. Marriott, for instance, they work with us to understand who are their best customers, where are those best customers found, and what is the value back to the brand, so they can increase home run locations and decrease putting a low performer in the marketplace. Just to give you a sense of our footprint, over the past 12 months, we've analyzed over 80,000 sites. Of those 80,000 sites, 7,500 new stores open. Now, we've estimated in the same 12 months of around 32,500 new stores that opened, that Buxton's analytics has had a direct impact on 25% of new stores. Now, not only does that tell you that we have a major imprint and footprint in the marketplace, but it also provides you an understanding that it's very competitive in the site selection. So retailers are typically looking at around 8 to 10 or more locations before they narrow it down to that final store that they're going to open. So that's why it's important to be proactive in your recruitment strategies to have success here in Washington, and why you've partnered with us, so that we know how retailers are looking at your market and taking that approach to know who your consumers are, that makeup of the customers that are here. So getting beyond just basic demographics and knowing how the households are living their lives and spending their dollars here. So for instance, some of the key households that make up the customers in your trade area consist of a mix of young, active couples with children at home that are spending their dollars on convenience-oriented purchases. You also have a mix of younger households that are under 35, that are digitally savvy, that are under, like I mentioned, under 35, but they're on their phones and online over 25 times a week, and they're up to date on the latest fashion trends. There's also your seniors and retirees that are in the community that are making health-related purchases and also enjoying daytime activities and are cautious money managers. Now, those are just some of the key consumers that make up your marketplace that we know are here, that you boast for retailers. We've also evaluated your trade area. So when you get beyond political boundaries and look at 20 minutes, because that's how customers think, they think in your drive time. So in 20 minutes, we know there's over 100,000 consumers and potential customers for a retailer within your trade area. Taking a look at the other conditions that are present. So what's increasing the foot traffic into your market? What are those key traffic drivers? Looking at the accessibility of a potential location in Washington. Also knowing that you have dollars leaving the community in retail categories such as sit-down dining, as well as pharmacy. And knowing that knowing those retailers that are operating in those areas most similar to yours is the approach that we've taken. So we've looked at the thousands of companies that are out there, and we've identified those target retail companies that are operating in markets with a similar mix of customers, with a similar trade area and market factors that you boast to date within your community. Now, not only did we identify those retailers each year of our partnership, we've also provided you with all the materials that you need in that validation to communicate to a retailer, to show them why they should be considering a location here in Washington, showing them the locations that they have on the ground that are similar to your trade area, and supporting you throughout our next step. So we've sent letters to each of these companies, letting them know that we've gone through an in-depth study that validated why they should be considering a location here in your community. And your team, your city staff has been actively leveraging our findings to engage with each of these companies. And we're here as a staff extension. So this is an ongoing strategy that's long-term that we have to continue to develop our roadmap to success. So supporting you with ongoing intel, what's going on within the industry with our retailers that we've identified, but also sharing intelligence with you and knowing other companies that are looking in your area. We've also assisted with custom analyses as well to support economic development initiatives here in Washington. So with entertainment brands that have been looking in your market. Also with a pharmacy that has been looking at exit 8 and exit 10. We did an analysis of the area looking at 5 minutes. Washington boasts higher population, household, and expenditures on prescription drugs than at the other exits that they were evaluating. So being able to provide you that information so that you can get in front of each of these companies and proactively recruit retail. It's important with our initiatives that we're focused on these companies that are the right fit for your trade area, showing them why they should be considering a location that's viable in your market. When you understand being a smaller community, you don't have that luxury of the organic growth that a community that's 3 or 4 times larger has, such as St. George. You're going to have to be proactive, and that's why you've hired us to be proactive and focused on these right companies and to use our resources to develop these relationships and networks to have long-term success here in the community. Now, where we are today and leveraging the market validation that we've uncovered for the specific retailers that we have validated should be here in your market, there is a diner that's planned here within your market, within the community. We know that there has been an ask from citizens, from council even, for an organic grocer. We have validated an organic grocer that would do extremely well here that's not currently in the market, and they're considering and reviewing the area currently. We also have been engaging with entertainment concepts. So with around 30% or so of the population being children, we know there's a lot of families here in the area with that need for entertainment. We are in strong conversations with a regional entertainment concept. It's a bowling brand, and they are looking at sites here within your market. I mentioned earlier, we've been assisting with the pharmacy and showing them why they should be considering a Washington. They're still in talks from sending the information that we had. They actually had a phone call immediately afterwards and have said that they wanted to plan a site visit. So that site visit is now being planned to put on the calendar. Now, there are several dining options that are also looking at your area. Now, with those dining concepts, there are steps pending with identifying that franchisee. So getting a local operator for those brands will be next steps. Now, there are other dining options that we have identified that the team is actually engaging with that franchisee already. So as far as next steps from here, we want to continue cultivating these relationships that we forged in the first years of our partnership. But we want to continue that momentum from here so that we've laid the groundwork for success, but we have to continue to build on that so that we're having these relationships that are built and we're continuing to communicate with your team. So this is a joint effort. We're working with you on overall development on the retail sector here in your market, but also assisting with retaining businesses as well. So we have a new application that we have just launched to support your existing businesses called Local Store Marketing. I'm going to share with you a video here shortly about that new tool that we've provided. So we're not only supporting you with help in developing the new retail growth within your market, but we're also here to support those existing businesses as well. Overall, we're working to meet your end goals to increase tax revenue, the quality of life, and keep the businesses that are here that have already made that investment in your community. So here's the video about our new tool.
Through our partnership with Buxton, we were able to provide you with the subscription to LSMX, a local store marketing application designed for small business owners. LSMX gives you insights into the area around your store and allows you to market to new customers. With LSMX, you can see who and where your potential customers are. It also shows you what's happening around your trade area that might affect your business performance, like local events or traffic congestion. And what really differentiates LSMX from any other tool, it completely executes marketing campaigns to new customers right from your mobile device. As long as we are partnered with Buxton, we are happy to provide you with access to LSMX, an easy-to-use tool for customer insights, marketing execution, and campaign tracking, designed just for you. Here's how it works. Enter some basic information about your business. You tell us which location you're focused on. LSMX takes over from there. It immediately shows you on a map who and where your potential customers are. Each red dot represents a household with the greatest potential value to your specific business, a household that has been matched to your business profile. No more guessing. You can be confident you've located real potential customers using household level data. LSMX shows you how far your customers are willing to drive to get to your location with Drive Time Trade Area. When you focus your marketing dollars on the households in this area, you're 75% more likely to convert those dollars into real sales. LSMX can also show you up to 30 different types of events in your area. You simply choose which types you want to see. LSMX will show you where and when these events will take place. These events bring additional foot traffic into your trade area and create perfect marketing opportunities. Ready to start targeting? Simply draw a circle around the area you'd like to target. There, you've selected real households. It doesn't get much easier than that. Now you choose how you want to market to them, through Facebook, Google search, website banner ads, email, even direct mail. You don't have to upload or buy any lists. LSMX does all of that for you. You're ready to start creating ads. You choose your marketing approach, make an offer, or create an awareness campaign. LSMX will help you choose a catchy headline or allows you to write one yourself. You upload the imagery you want for your ad. You can take a new photo right on the spot or choose one from the photos library on your phone. Then review the details of the ad you've created and see previews of your ad before you approve it. Securely pay for your ads right through your phone with a credit card. And bingo, your ads are instantly live, direct mail is fulfilled, and begins printing within 10 minutes of you hitting the approve button. With LSMX, you're in complete control. Marketing your business has never been this quick and easy. This is the future of marketing your franchise, and it's right at your fingertips. LSMX, powered by Buxton. This is you marketing you.
So we're very pleased to be offering your local businesses, a subset of those businesses, access to this local store marketing tool. They're going to be able to log in, actually see where the best customers are for their business and do something about it, actually reach those households that they should be targeting through multiple channels to help drive more foot traffic into their stores. So if there are any local businesses that are interested in this tool, it'd be best to contact the community and we can get you access. We'll be able to get a subset of, again, those businesses access to this platform. So as I mentioned, going to keep it brief for you all today. If you have any specific questions, let me know. Overall, we've done the guesswork for you. We've looked at all of the retailers that are out there. We know those companies that like the customers that you hear. We know the customers that, or we know the retailers that your consumers want to shop at, but they currently don't have those offerings, but they should be here within Washington. We're working with city staff closely with Roger and engaging with each of these companies with the right information that they need to see to make their real estate decisions. Now, for anyone that's not familiar with how the real estate decision process works, most cases it's 18, 24, or even more months in advance that they're planning those stores. So what we're doing is we're getting in front of the right retailers that are sustainable for Washington. We're making those key contacts, and from here we want to continue to push that needle forward to have success long-term within your community. So we've made key contacts already, and we want to build on that momentum. So coming up in the new year, we're going to be adding additional retailers to our efforts while maintaining the relationships that have already been forged. Now, at this time, I'd love to answer any questions that anyone may have on our recruitment efforts or our new business retention tools.
What are you seeing in trends out there as a whole, brick and mortar versus online? It seems like, at least from my perspective, and yours is much greater, I'd like to hear your perspective, seem to be seeing more brick and mortar collapsing and not expanding and looking more at the online stuff. What do you guys see?
Sure. Well, we certainly see brick and mortar is not dead. Customers still want to feel and touch the products, and you are seeing an increase in online purchases as well. But the revenue that's being, and the sales actually are still higher at brick and mortar locations. Now, as far as those expansion strategies for retailers, we're going to continue to see how the retailers are operating and the concepts that they're putting in the market. Going to see that change, seeing smaller footprints going in. Also seeing companies that are playing with that more experimental concept. So bringing in rock climbing walls into an outdoor business for for instance, and making sure that they have that experience tied to the concept. So with the changes in how we are making our purchases as consumers, and many of us are becoming more of what we call an omni-channel customer. So you may be making purchases online, in store, or maybe clicks to bricks. So you're ordering online, and then at the grocery store, they're filling it up, putting it in your car vehicle for you. That's a trend that we're going to continue to see. And because of that, it is impacting how those retailers are planning their strategy. So still seeing those store closures, but also mostly re-strategizing what the new locations are going to look like, and how does that impact those online sales. But overall, brick and mortar is not dead, but the way those the stores are going to be operating, we're going to continue to see that shift.
So just along that line, I mean, we talked to an extremely large retailer that was one of our targeted retailers that matched our profile, and they're exactly going through that right now. They're still got a brick and mortar option, but they're trying to figure out the market right now. You know, we've had Amazon come in and kind of announce that they're going to be doing, whether a click and brick or whatever. Amazon's going to be doing something out there, actually some physical presence out there. And so they're just kind of trying to figure out the new strategy. But yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a Wild West right now with some of that going on.
You talked about foot traffic. And I think when you were here last year, I talked about 4.5 million people going to Zion on the roads. And how does what you've told us today take that into consideration?
Sure. I didn't touch on it in detail today of how that's being factored in. There's two different ways that would be factored into our analysis. One is looking at the customer. So the initial year of our partnership, we not only looked at the households that are within your trade area, but also who's visiting the area and spending dollars here within Washington. And we looked all across the country of where those households are coming in and who they are as consumers. So when we're looking at those customers and what are the type of households that are here, we're not only looking at the residents and workers in your trade area, but also the visitors that are coming into the market that are spending dollars in the community. And what retailers not only like your residents and workers, but the visitors that are spending dollars here.
When you say in our community, do you mean the St. George area as well as Washington?
Looking at your community's zip codes.
Just Washington.
For that aspect. Now we are looking at the entire trade area for your community, but when looking at the kind of think of it as a separate piece, we are looking at your specific zip codes and your who's spending dollars actually and making up your tax revenue here.
Okay. I guess what I want to do is almost impossible, but it's not who's spending money here because we don't have all the trade that we want to have. But it's who could be spending money here if
Sure.
we had the right businesses attracting those people here.
So exactly what is that potential?
In other words, I think your numbers probably are, not as high as we'd like if you talk about who's spending money here because, aside from Walmart and a few businesses like that, they may not be as visitors to this area, but they could be.
Because the service isn't currently here. Right, is that where you're getting at?
Because there are services that they would use if they were available.
Right.
How do we capture the data for the stuff that we just not the transactions that aren't actually taking place for the people?
Sure. So one way that we evaluate that is.
Oh, just expanded zip code? Is that what you're talking about? That's what I'm thinking.
Well,
I didn't know what you meant by capturing the data that's not being spent.
Well, if our only data is.
I'd like to know how Buxton could do that, but is it just expanded zip code?
Maybe it is.
Expanded zip code.
Yeah, that certainly would be part of it. If we had the attractions, would they then come? If we had the water park, for example, or we had Lagoon 2 sitting on exit 13 or something like that. What are the possibilities? We don't happen to have those possibilities because we aren't offering them, but those people are going past us.
Sure. Well, we could take a next step and look at the transactions like we did in Washington and St. George and seeing where the consumer's coming from there. We could also see what are the residents that are going there as well. And Another piece that you already have access to is our leakage and surplus analysis. So we can look at your political boundaries and actually see what is the leakage or dollars that are leaving the community based on the businesses that you have, expenditures, and so forth that are here. So I could get you that information as well, so you can actually look at a detailed list of store types and what is the amount of dollars that's leaving, and then where are you also attracting non-local shoppers into the market.
Yeah,
That's a great point. And that's a good report. I'm glad you brought that up because that might be closer to what you're asking for. So what they do is they break it down by segment, by market segment. I mean, very detailed if you want to do. And they talk about how many more dollars you could capture if you offered. There's a couple things. It's a leakage and a surplus. How much more you
Yeah,
can
that would
capture
be
if you
community
offered.
based as opposed to
Yes.
visitor based, but it would certainly show us what those two food
Yeah,
stores are
that's
doing
a
to
report
us.
we have access to. We ought to probably pull that and let you look at that. That'd be very interesting to the council, I think.
Absolutely.
I'd just like to say just a couple things real quick. One of the things that we monitor on a regular basis, and I think it's important that we recognize this because sometimes we kind of lose perspective, but we compare annually our sales tax as a percentage of general fund to communities similar to ours, similar in characteristics, similar in population. So these would be the Paysons, the Syracuse, the Farmingtons, we even throw in Cedar City. Some of those are the I-15 corridor. Those are similar population. And what we look at again is their sales tax collection as a percentage of budget of general funds. And Washington kind of, and this is probably pretty understandable because so much of business, especially retail, is driven by rooftops. And we're right there. I mean, matter of fact, we exceed a number of communities that I just mentioned as regards to sales tax as a percentage and the actual dollar. We look at both the percentage and the dollar. So I think that's an important perspective for us to have because oftentimes we just sit and we look across the fence and we say, well, geez, what's going on across the fence that we can't get? But it's a different perspective. I mean, I learned the term organic growth today, and organic growth comes with size, and that's what happens. So we're kind of where we are, but of course we have a long way to go too, and so that's what we're focused on. I will say two other things. This LSMX, this is in my opinion, a way that we will continue to at least offer some support to existing businesses, because the challenge with recruitment is you bring these stores in and they say, well, you bring them in and you forgot us. Actually, they're competing with us now. And so we'll have 25 of these options to share with what we're going to share. We can choose, but we're going to choose those with our upstart and our small businesses as a tool to use. So if nothing else, they can get data that they need to help them in their marketing and to remind the local businesses that have been here and been plowing away with us that we are still concerned about their success as well. And then finally, I'll just say that, this is a long game. And, but I will tell you that over the last 2 years, from my perspective, number one, we've done more site visits than we ever have. We've been more focused in our efforts. We've talked to more retailers than we ever have that are willing to talk to us. And I think in large part, at least I can express some appreciation to Buxton for helping us get focused on that issue. And that really is the first step in driving that plow into the ground, which then still takes time. I've appreciated members of the council that have been involved in the economic development side. And I think they would maybe even agree with me that we've done a number of site visits. We've had lots of discussions this year, probably more than ever before. And so we've had a good partner with respect.
Any other questions or comments for Cheyenne?
Thank you for making the trip.
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure.
She's going to Zion National Park tomorrow
Good for her.
the first time.
Yes.
Really?
Looking forward to it.
Go early.
Go early. There's 4 million people up there.
We also work on our tourism marketing, so that we're not saying go early because there's 4 million people at our parks. So you'll have a great experience.
Thank you again, Cheyenne. Okay, move on to item 7, Intermountain Healthcare Annual Update and Review. Steve and Mitchell, looks like. Terry's off tonight. You gave her the break tonight.
Yes.
Good for you.
Well, good evening. I'm Steve Kaplan, and I serve as the chairman of the governing board for Dixie Regional Medical Center. This is Mitch Cloward. He is an executive at Intermountain Healthcare, Dixie Regional Medical Center. I'll tell you the specific role in a moment. Also with us tonight is Terry Draper. She's the Regional Communications Director for Intermountain and supports the hospital in all of our outreach. We are grateful to be with you. We'll try to be brief tonight and simply say that we have an amazing hospital. It's a regional specialty hospital that provides health care in so many ways, up from primary care services through the most complex specialties. And there are very, very few specialties which are not offered here at Dixie Regional Medical Center. Among some of the most notable clinical programs are a award-winning cardiovascular surgery program, a neurosciences program which does spine and cranial surgery, stroke intervention, a neonatal intensive care unit, a terrific intensive care unit for adults, and a level 2 trauma center. There were 52,000 visits to our emergency department last year, and that number is growing this year. We are, this is very important for you to know, a economic development engine. We applaud the city leadership for your efforts in identifying ways to make the city prosper with economic prosperity. And one of the prerequisites that any business or any family identifies before relocating to this area or making the decision to stay is the quality of healthcare. And for 40 years, Intermountain Healthcare has provided the best healthcare. You may recall that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints owned 15 hospitals. In 1975, they donated them as a gift to the citizens of the state of Utah. And in 1976, just 1 year later, this new system called Intermountain Healthcare, which was a gift from the church to the state, made its first acquisition, and that acquisition was Dixie Regional Medical Center. And the promise made at the time to the citizens of this county was that we would provide the highest quality care at the lowest possible price, regardless of one's ability to pay. And I'm happy to report, as just a humble community volunteer, that I've witnessed a tremendous commitment on the part of Intermountain Healthcare to invest in this community. We have a hospital with over 300 physicians credentialed to practice and over 2,500 employees. So we are the largest private employer in the region. This is Mitch Cloward. Now, let me just say, and he can speak to this in a moment, but there's been a reorganization at Intermountain Healthcare recently announced, and the regional structure was dissolved. Now, we all know and love Terry Kane. She's one of the most beloved and capable executives in the state of Utah. She's been our regional vice president and the CEO of Dixie Regional Medical Center for the past 11, 12 years. Mm-hmm. And Mitch, just last year, had been appointed, having made a standout performance as one of the operations officers. He had just been appointed as the administrator. So with this new structural change at Intermountain Healthcare, Mitch has become, effective December 1st, the new CEO/administrator of Dixie Regional. And so our governing board, which represents this whole region, will be continuing to work very closely with Mitch. One of the most notable things we can say is that Dixie Regional is a not-for-profit hospital. So the stakeholders are the citizens of our communities. And we are very, very grateful for the support and the partnership with the City of Washington. You've been a terrific partner. We thank you for that. And we feel like we've tried everything we possibly could do to help you prosper as a municipality and to bless the citizens of your city by providing the highest quality health care. Now, we do that as a not-for-profit organization. The stakeholders are the citizens. There are no investors other than the patients themselves. And we operate on a very small operating margin. It's a positive margin of about 5%. And we're happy to report that all of that goes back into reinvestment to new equipment and clinical programs. And we would like to point out on this one document, everyone in the audience should have just a summary of this. On the back, you'll notice the 2016 awards and recognitions. On the front, you'll see a picture of Mitch and others. And the bottom line of this is that total charity care provided by the hospital was $31 million. $31 million of charitable care. This does not include bad debt. So those who entered the hospital and were not able to pay for the care they received were among those treated to that extent. And you'll notice that it's up significantly from 2015. Now, regarding economic development and the promise kept to provide the best health care, we're in the middle of one of the most exciting economic development initiatives in the history of the county. It's the doubling of the size of the current hospital, a $300 million project. And Mitch knows all about that. Maybe I'll turn the time over to him and then we can take questions after his project update.
Thanks, Steve.
So our construction is about just over 500,000 square feet. So when our project's completed next year, we'll have about 1 million square feet on our campus of space to provide healthcare. A few highlights that are pretty interesting. One is that the Human Genome Project took 10 years to complete at a cost of about $3 billion in our new cancer center. We can sequence a person's genes in 2 to 4 days at a cost of $2,000. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to find that mutant cancerous gene where we can, instead of traditional radiation or chemotherapy, you swallow a pill, you take a drug, and it's designed to attack that mutant gene. And so we're very hopeful that our research will pay off in terms of what we think is the future of cancer care. It's pretty exciting. We're partnered with Stanford University in doing that. And you just wouldn't see that happening in a community this size anywhere else. So we're very grateful for that. Something really neat is that if a person needed their aortic valve replaced in their heart, traditionally you'd have a heart surgeon that would make a big incision in your chest, open your chest, and replace that valve surgically. Now, through a tiny catheter, you can go up through an artery in your leg, up into your heart. That new replacement valve is inside that tiny catheter. They place it over your existing valve, release it, and you have a new heart valve there. So the recovery is much shorter. There's just some remarkable things happening over our hospital, and we're grateful to be able to serve the citizens of Southern Utah and a 3-state area, really. So thank you. Yeah.
Mitchell, thank you.
Yeah.
It just makes me lightheaded when you talk about blood and gut.
We're happy to take any questions you may have and involve Terry Draper, if you'd like.
I don't have a question, but I do have accolades for what you've brought to the community and the quality of care that's available to our citizens, and it's a remarkable thing. It may someday pass development as the premier industry in our area.
I'll add an amen to that. I do have one question. I just noticed that our volunteer hours and our volunteers are down. Volunteers are down very slightly. Volunteer hours are down a little bit. What would you attribute that to? Are we going more full-time staff with the growth, or?
They made a slight adjustment in the way those hours are counted. So that's just a statistical anomaly for this particular.
Oh, okay.
You sure it's not parking?
Our volunteers would go up if we were going to be doing parking.
All right, Colleen, let's not go there.
No, accolades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly, you bring a great attribute to our community, and we are so grateful and thankful for what you bring to us. Thanks.
I did want to encourage these guys to do one thing, but since they got me up here, I'll say it. I just wanted to let you know that Terry Kane's not going away in that announcement. Right. She's received a promotion, so she will actually have broader accountability. She'll stay based here. She's going to help us get many components of the expansion that she's been intimately involved with completed, and we'll still be able to work with her. We're very grateful for that.
Well, I think we might want to point out that she lives in Washington City.
We should have done that. She lives in Coral Canyon. She loves the city and is grateful for your leadership. But as Terry said, that promotion is substantial. This makes her one of the highest level healthcare executives in the country, leading in significant ways some of the most complex clinical programs in our system, systems in the world. So we're happy for Terry. We're grateful for Mitch.
Sure. Thank you all very much. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Move on to item 8, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve the preliminary plat for Rusted Hills, phases 6, 7, and 8, located approximately Bronco Drive and Rusted Hills Drive. Applicant Ray DeWitt.
Sorry for the letdown. It's just me coming up for now land use stuff. It's been pretty exciting to listen to all this. So thank you, Mayor. As stated, this is the request to approve a preliminary plat for Rusted Hills phases 6, 7, and 8. Proposing 25 lots and an area coverage of 11.5 acres. Zoning on this particular subdivision or subdivision C3 is the R115, or the single family residential 15,000 square foot minimum. Surrounding zoning to this particular subdivision is R115 to the north, east, and west, and R115 combined with the RA1 attached with the bonus density credits to the south. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements, other city ordinances at this location. Staff's reviewed and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat. Planning Commission reviewed the request at their October 18th, 2017 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval for the preliminary plat for Rusted Hills phases 6, 7, and 8 onto the City Council with the findings and subject to the conditions in your report, and they're the standard 11. There were no extras added on to that. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Drew, is that a half-width road going out to that cul-de-sac on the south end of it?
You know, I doubt that it is. I mean, I can look into that. That's part of Rusted Hills phases 4. It might just look, you know, because I seriously doubt it's a half-sized road. But we'll follow up on that.
Is that already platted?
Yes. Phase 4 is, well, I mean, is it final? No, not yet. But they, you know, phases 1 and 2 are completed in that. 3 and 4 have been, but 4 has not been final platted yet.
But it's preliminary platted.
Correct.
So this is phase 6, 7, and 8. Where are the phase lines?
You can see those dotted. They're kind of hard to see, but
It looks to me like I've got 2 phases here, not 3. I'm just curious why.
you know, there is a missing phase line because I'm and I know that Brandy's not here. She actually left out of town, or else she would be here. And I don't know if it's running down the street or not.
That's fine.
But when those final plats come in, we'll address all those.
There's only 25 lots. That just seems.
It does. We've had
Seems
developers
excessive
do
on
that
phasing.
before, where they'll do, you know, 7, 8, 9 lots on a final plat. I think it's just all about probably finances at that point is what they're going to do, on those. So.
Any other questions for Drew or the applicant? Now I entertain a motion.
Drew, if you go ahead and just verify that cul-de-sac, I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Rusted Hills phases 6, 7, and 8, located at approximately Bronco Drive and Rusted Hills Drive.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second.
Burdick, aye.
Nice night.
Bellis tonight.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Thank you. That is approved. Final plat amendment continuation of a consideration to approve an amendment to the final plat for Rusted Hills Phase 1 for the purpose to increase lots 10 and 11, located approximately Majestic Drive and Camino Royale. Applicant JT Custom Homes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on that last one, I'll definitely look into those items as we go forward. This is a request, and it was tabled due to the applicant's request 2 weeks ago, and they're ready to move forward on this amended and extended final plat for Rusted Hills Phase 1. This particular amendment request is simply to increase the size of lots 10 and 11. You can see that little change right there, and it follows northward along the backside of both 10 and 11. And in so doing, it's going to decrease lots 12 and 13, which will be your next agenda item. And the reason simply for this is there's an elevation change between these four lots. And in trying to work out and get this taken care of, the property owners have all been trying to work together. And the reason this is needed so they can do a 2-tier retaining wall, not that they're going to have one massive one. They're going to come up so many feet, do a planter, then do another retaining wall. And so just in the layout, and after they've had an engineer come look at it, they wanted to make that shift and give lots 10 and 11 this extra. The planter strip will end up being in theirs because they're the ones who will utilize it in that step over. And so that's the reason for both these that you're seeing here. And the Planning Commission reviewed the request. Their October 18th meeting, they unanimously recommended approval of the amended and extended Rusted Hills Phase 1 to the City Council. The findings and conditions, and they're the standard conditions because these two subdivisions exist already. And so we're just moving some lines.
If I remember correctly, and I may not, the owners, or one of the owners of lot 12 or 13 was concerned whether or not those retaining walls would be a condition of our approval of this plat.
I would hope so. That's the whole reason they're doing this.
I know.
And
So
it's probably
is
lot number 12. They're the ones who really haven't been, between the three. It's been three of them all working together, but because their lot is affected on that one top corner right there, by that 6-foot span there. Again, this is the reason that they're doing this.
I know it's the reason, but is it a condition?
Make it that.
Probably could.
It'd be appropriate to do so. That way we make sure that the reason.
Well, they need to be protected because we could go through all this and then they don't do that, then those lots are somewhat insecure, so. Okay.
Any other questions or comments on that?
Okay, you ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion. Are you?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay. I move approval of the amendment to the final plat for Rusted Hills Phase 1 to increase lots 10, 11, located approximately Majestic Drive and Camino Real, and requires a condition of that approval that the retaining wall be completed.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellison, aye.
Nice night.
Turek, aye.
All right, that one is approved. Move on to item B, consideration to approve an amendment to the final plat for Rusted Hills Phase 2 for the purpose of to decrease lots 12 and 13 located approximately Rusted Hills Drive and Bronco Drive, again, JT Custom Homes.
I think I'll simply just say ditto to the presentation last time. It's all inclusive there for, you can see the decrease in this particular area at the north end, south end of that of approximately 6 feet, or is it 6 or 8 feet?
Same
My eyes are
condition.
I
bad.
think it's
Same.
5 on the other, or 6.
Well,
you're
let's
right.
see. I can.
No,
This
you're
this
right.
one's not
It's
as clear as this one is. It's 6 feet.
6 foot, okay.
So
Does the same condition apply to this one? Should we make a condition of the wall?
you might as well. It affects more of the other two than this one, but you can be consistent with it. By the way, the planning commission unanimously recommended approval of this. I guess I should include that in there at their meeting. So
Never assume, right? You ready to make a motion?
I probably am.
Okay.
Okay, I move approval of the amendment to the final plat for Rusted Hills Phase 2 to decrease lots 12 and 13 with the same condition as in A, that retaining walls be completed as part of this condition.
Second.
Ivy, aye.
Thank you.
Granger, aye.
Ellison, aye.
Nice night.
Turek, aye.
Right, that's also approved. Thank you. Item 10, ordinance, continuation of consideration to approve an ordinance, excuse me, adopting zone change Z-17-7525 to create a new PUD located approximately Bella Vista Drive, applicant SJ Property Holdings LLC.
thank you, Mayor. As stated, this item was tabled at the City Council's meeting of October 25th, which at the time had just completed the required 2-week holdover. This item is ready for City Council action. The tabling is to give more time to consider the minor changes to the proposed zone change. Now, with that said, the council should have received probably an email yesterday afternoon or evening from the applicants, and they understood the City Council still has concerns with this big of a project and all the components that are with it. So they met with me yesterday afternoon, had a proposal to talk about, and then they that was earlier in the day, and they sent on to you folks with an option, and your decision was to, and if Tara, we could go to Elmo. Didn't get that in, so we'll. I'll start a little big here, but we're going to, again, address the area that was changed and proposed 2 weeks ago and focus in on this west portion of the project. The applicants would propose to the City Council of kind of modifying their request at this point, just focusing in on this particular area. And since I've done that relationship to the whole project, let me now change the screen. This is a little bit bigger version of it. And the proposal they'd like to have the council maybe consider is just focusing in on this particular area, asking for this specific layout on the PUD, then seeking a tabling of the rest of the project till your new PUD ordinances are approved in the next month and a half. And then have it tabled until sometime in January when that happens, and then seek to get what the council strive for with the new PUDs to just zone the rest of the project PUD, then come back in with each particular area under its own approval, like is how the PUD is going to work anyway. They'll do basically a site plan approval of each different phase or area as they go forward. And that's kind of what the layout of the new PUD ordinance is kind of based on. with the given area PUD zoning, and then come back with the specifics at a later date through public hearings as well. So in essence, I hope I've made myself clear. They want to focus in on this particular area. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have as it relates to that particular new vein on this particular
So this is
proposal.
the map they want, not the map that we had in our packet.
Correct. This area has been changed a bit. You can see the difference. Again, they still kept with the no driveways on Bella Vista. Zoom in. So everything is still loaded driveway wise internally. They have made a note on here, a promise of single level homes on this particular area, which would appease the folks at Horizons West is what they sought. And so all these homes, lots number 110 through 119 would all be single story homes. And they did pop in an amenity area for this area, some pavilions with barbecue pits and probably some shuffleboard is what those two long pieces, like an equal sign there, would be like a shuffleboard amenity here for the project. This would be geared toward adult community, is that correct? I did want to state that they will be promoting this and be earmarked as adult community.
Is it legal
What legal?
to have adult-only communities?
It's up to 80%, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, the law says you can't exclusively say it's a 55 and older for the whole thing. You have to, the state of Utah came with a law, I think, a good 5-7 years ago. I can't remember. It used to be, it's somewhere between 85 and 90% you can exclusively do. They're just going to promote it instead of saying a 55 and older, which you really can't legally do. But you can call, it's like Brio calls theirs an adult community. Now, again, if they can put in their CC&Rs that it's only this, but they do have to leave a percentage by state law. Now,
Can we put it in the PUD?
I would think so. I'd just say that they can promote this as adult community as per state law, you know, is what we could do and would do.
Now, this is the area last time, if I recall, that we were talking about starter homes.
That has changed.
Yes.
With it being targeted toward adult community, then it is no longer going to be.
Has there been some
promoted.
resolution of the parking areas?
Well, you can see they've added these extra parking stalls here. Councilman Belson and I talked earlier, but as I went and I brought up how their footprints work, every home has an 18-foot driveway, so it eliminates the worry about the tandem because that's, in essence, two parking.
For 2 cars?
That's wide enough for 2 cars, so you still have the garage and the side for
Every home
that.
has an 18-foot driveway with a single car garage.
That's
and
what's
a
on the.
30-foot width. I don't have any floor plans in this.
I don't know why they didn't get transferred over to you, but here's. This is part of the exhibits that's been in your previous packets, which still would have to be continued on.
Okay, so I got a bunch of elevations here that don't match that.
Now, don't be misled by so much the pads are going to be different than the home itself. Does that make sense? The pads and stuff have to change because of the elevations and stuff that have been brought in.
Through this road on the east, let me see, it'd be the west side. On the map that we have here, the road runs in between the neighbor. On the one you're showing, the houses are there. So which is it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is what you received this last night as a proposal. So this is what they are proposing to you tonight.
And so this goes back to the proposal that you made that the road would be off of the boundary on the west side, right?
Right. And that's because of the 1-story versus 2-story thing. We thought, well, if we put a road, then it won't matter. They can put 2 stories wherever they want. This is what they're proposing. So with that, eliminating the road next to Horizons West, they put in there, the note says that they'll all be single-story homes.
And what assurances, do we and the neighbors have that it will continue to be 55 and older? I mean,
Well, you put it in as one of your conditions as a zoning, and that's what they have to follow the state law, that they can have up to percentage, but we also know that by state law, they have to offer. Now, they don't have to not sell those homes, but if somebody came and did that, but if they sell out to all 55 and older, the state can't sit and come back and say, oh, you didn't. If somebody came to buy one and then they were refused to be able to purchase it, and there was one available, then that's when, they get in trouble state-wise with the state law.
Suppose I'm that 55-year-old, but can I sell my home to a 35-year-old?
If you probably fall within the percentage, I think that's what that state law would almost allow you to do.
Sounds a little like it could get complicated.
Well, it can be, except that if there's 7 of you and say that's that 15%, or there's 8 of you that want to do it, the first 7 who sell are the ones you get to. The 8th one then would be, nope, I can't. I'd have to sell mine to a 55 and older because of the CC&Rs and the zoning.
There's someone on site that monitors all that?
Well,
You have an HOA probably that would.
yeah, you would definitely have to have an HOA, and especially in this project, because it's pads, it's going to have an HOA no matter what. So that would be one of the responsibilities. And if it dissolves, then all the property owners are going to have to bond together and do it anyway, like we do with anything else. They'll be responsible for that.
One question I'd have with the trail that's been proposed, looks like we've got a piece of it in this here, but that's going on out to 300 if I remember right. Would that trail stay in as part of this amenity to this project, to where that trail would also be built as part of this phasing?
I think I'll turn that over to the applicant, what the phasing on that would be and how you would want to do that.
Okay.
I guess that would be between the city council. Again, it's PUD, so, you guys can probably, I don't want to.
I guess the reason I question that is this portion of the PUD that we've talked about. So if we allow this being built out, to me, that's part of the amenity to this piece, but I'll let them address it.
Yeah, and that's what, like I said, you guys we'll bring them up in a second. Unless you have any more questions for me, but that's what the proposal is tonight, and that's why you don't, you see the difference. This is the one where I have to go to your email, but this is what was in your email, and that's what they would like to propose tonight, as I understand.
Is the density any different?
There's actually a few less, well, compared to the, I think it's almost identical in that proposal from last time, because it was around 50-something units, and that's what's in this.
57 versus 59, but the sizes of the units are a little bit different.
A little bit different. Some of them.
They took out the additional buildings where they put the amenities.
No, there wasn't any.
Can you just clarify again that this particular proposal got to the council when?
Well, I'm not sure. They got their emails like they did the previous 2 weeks ago on the change, I think yesterday afternoon or evening.
And the only reason I'd say that, and maybe Council Starkey can address this, is there will have to be a determination on if this is substantive or not with respect to whether this needs to be posted at a public hearing again. And so I think it's important that we lay that out right now. And I don't know if he's had a chance because he's been out of town, especially when the email came in yesterday sometime, that I think that just needs to be understood.
And I will point out this one's actually a whole lot more closer to the original that they had during their public hearing. Yeah.
And ultimately, and I'm not going to speak, ultimately, I think that's the advice that will have to come from council on whether that needs to be.
Well, Mayor and Council, first of all, I either apologize for being late or I apologize for coming at all, because I dropped off a child in northern Utah today at 3:30 and had no intention of making it back in time. And since it was such a quiet and car ride we had for the last 4 hours, I assume I'm just going to come in. There's no point in just going home and just being quiet as we were in the car. So having said that, let's face it, this particular project has had a lot of interest. It has raised a lot of comments and evaluation, I think, by the city council, by the planning commission, by the public, by the developer. And so I certainly can't say anything about what specifically came in yesterday on the emails and maybe what the changes have been, given the fact that I really haven't seen it. I was actually traveling probably the time it came through. I'll just tell you this, if I'm the developer or if I'm the public or if I'm the city council, I'd want to be, if anything, I'd want to be cautious on this one just because we've been so cautious so far. And so again, I think I'm gonna have to evaluate to see what changes have come in, how those make implications that maybe those are issues that the public might either want or have the right to have some public hearing input into, and for you to receive that, and frankly, for you to evaluate it. I'm just not, I can't speak for any of you here, but to a great extent, it may involve just how comfortable you feel about receiving it just yesterday, given the fact you've tried to be so careful about making sure the public was aware of what's come in. I think we need to be cautious about whether or not we need to have a public hearing on this aspect of it if we're going to go forward with it. So, and I just can't say right now. I just haven't seen enough of it to be able to make that comparison. But the city council has always been very cautious about those types of things.
So I can appreciate your counsel and your direction there, but I'm not saying that we may not be in our best interest to go back and hold another public hearing. But a lot of the changes that we're seeing here is actually, in my opinion, positive changes that came from the public hearing. They've heard the public and they've come back and changed the concerns that the public had that I see. So it may not hurt us to hold another one.
Which would be one of those times in which we would think, well, you don't need to necessarily go back to the public hearing if the changes have been made based on public comments and based on what you anticipated would come back. It certainly wouldn't. I just can't tell you since I hadn't seen it until I walked in right now. So my timing was either great or horrible.
No, it was great. We're glad to have you back.
Yeah.
You can cry on this shoulder.
Yeah.
So Drew, what we're looking at is just whether or not we approve this on that west side. Everything else that's on this map is tabled, meaning it doesn't exist.
Not till not till January.
Yeah, right now it's still in limbo because the rest of this area will be tabled. We'll set a date so that everybody knows when that is. The planning commission tabled the PUDs in their meeting on the 1st. So they're going to hear them next week with some minor revisions and stuff. So you will be getting those in your meeting of December, that only meeting you'll have, that second Wednesday in December. You will be looking at those for your decision on those new PUDs. And so that's why we just talked about tabling this until January, the rest of this. So in essence, I hope that answers your question, that yes, they just tabled the other portion.
The PUD ordinance itself. Yes. They've been working on it.
Yeah, they just want to table the rest of this and come back and just say, we want to take advantage of your new PUD, since that's on the table now, and get it zone PUD, and then we'll come back and hit each area. And you can drill in on just this area. That's how they would bring the development in. Is almost in phasing, like the subdivision we just talked about, that they would just hit each one as a phase at a future. And I think that's what the intent of the PUD that the council that we're going is somewhat hits.
Part of the problem with this one is it's such a big thing. If you don't like one part of it, you kind of you're tossing the whole thing out. So to break it down into pods or different sections makes a whole lot more sense. But I guess I would be more comfortable having the discussion on this parcel in conjunction with the discussion on the overnight rental, even though they're broken out separate. And I don't know how the rest of the council feels about that, but I kind of don't look at them as independent issues. I look at them as the same.
And if I may, I was just going to add on, here's what's proposed to you tonight. Here's what you looked at originally, what the planning commission sent on to you. Again, none of this area here has changed. If you just look on here and focus on here and see that layout.
This is what the public hearing was held on. This
the
is what we heard from public
hearing
hearing.
was held on. And then here's what you can see they've kind of gone back to that same thing. It's just they took the driveways off of Bella Vista Drive. And that was one of the concerns. They've also hit on these single-story homes next to Bryce's West. So, you know, when we get back to that, I guess I'd be more concerned about what was thrown to you 2 weeks ago with what Council Starkey has told you versus maybe, that's just my opinion, seeing that, you know, this and this are not too far. Which I can put
Well,
maybe, I'm just,
if the application in front of us was this stuff in the southeast, screen up a little bit, right there, south of Bonnie Lane and east of, what's that road?
which one are you talking about?
The roundabout in it.
Bella Vista Drive.
Oh, okay.
If you were talking that area and said, hey, we want to do those overnight rental and we want to do this as our phase one,
This area here.
then I don't know.
Well, I'd go back to what they're talking about tonight. I think the decision we have, this is what they're proposing, and I think the decision this council needs to look at is it in our best interest to bring it back as a public hearing and consider just this proposal? Or, which has kind of been what we've been counseled to do, in my opinion? Or do you want to move forward with making a motion out of that proposal? Ultimately, that's the proposal that's on the table in my mind.
I think that we need to always remember that there's been a lot of input and wanted input from the neighbors, you know, from the people that live around there. And I think this might be an opportunity to have a hearing so that they can not necessarily weigh in on it, but at least be aware and give us some time to
Well, the
look at them
only
better.
thing that I guess, not to argue against that, but the fact that changes that you see on this are from your public hearing. I mean, those were the concerns that came in from the public that they've now addressed. Your driveway's out, your density's in, the homes against the neighbors, which, I mean, what I'm seeing is they've addressed those issues that came out of your public hearing. Not to say there maybe need some new ones come up. There may be. Interesting to see what they would be at this point, because I think they've addressed everything that came at them.
and all that with a 55 and over
Correct.
umbrella.
See, and that's a new one since the public hearing.
Well, so the 55 and older on the short term or the overnight rental, is it?
That's why the
55
overnight
and older gets to
See,
buy it, but then.
To me, the overnight rental thing's its own separate application. I'm looking at a zone right here, and I don't care about overnight rentals at this point.
I think Council Turk states generally what a position is when we have public hearings on a matter in which we hear comments, which there's some concern from the public or from the developer. And then that project comes back and it modifies it in accordance with what your discussion was. It tends to be why we have the public hearing. This just doesn't help by the fact that it just seems like it's been longer. But so what Council Turek says is that's exactly right how we approach those typically. It's just that this one has tended to just been a little more complex for all the reasons that have been stated, because we've had other elements to it that have been considered. So what Council Turek says, again, absolutely why we have the public hearing. Sometimes we tell developers to come back, address those concerns that you heard and that you would like to have addressed, and if it comes back and that's what's in there, generally, that's what we want it to do.
But some of the complexity, I think, is that I'm not suggesting this is what we would do at all, because I think till we get through all this, I'm not sure what we'll do. But if we decide we really only want short-term rental down around the amenity areas, okay, if we decided that, for example, then would that change what the developer wants to do here? And it certainly makes it more viable for it to be a community of 55 and older, because they would actually own the property, not be renting it out overnight. Renting it out overnight, you know it's going to be families going in there. They're not going to come as 55 and over. They're going to bring grandkids and kids, and, you know, it's just not, you know, so I guess I think maybe that's what Councilman Bellison's trying to say. They're connected. And when we look at the whole project, we say, okay, where in that project does it make sense for short-term rental? Because we know that's what the developers want. They want it all, actually, I think, but at least somewhere in that project is short-term rental, I suspect. But if it's not there, if it's really a 55 and older community, then it's not short-term rental, because that's not what's going to walk in there every single night. And there might be some other places that are more logical for short-term rental. And it may be that the developer, if he doesn't get short-term rental there, would rather start with something else. So it's so interconnected. The complexity never seems to end for us on this project.
Some of that may be true. There may be some of us inclined to say there is no short-term rental in there, period. So.
Well, and then we wonder what the implication is for the developer on what he wants to do first and what phase he wants to do, and if this is what he wants to do in that phase. So you're right, it's the second motion that we are looking at, but it may have implications for the first motion.
Any other comments? Excuse me.
We have currently in our ordinance, and Drew and I discussed this, that single detached residences require 2 parking stalls, and they can't be tandem. So, you know, if this does move forward, then I think we ought to have in a motion that each residence would have an 18-foot wide minimum by 20-foot depth driveway. I think it's tough to do with a 30-foot frontage, but, you know, I think to satisfy our current ordinance that we have on parking requirements, that's something that would have to be written into it or shown on this.
Would agree with that. What's the council's feelings about, I guess, the input I would like to have is what's the council's feelings about the public hearing portion of it? Would you rather bring it back public hearing wise, or would you like to consider where we set tonight?
Mind if we ask people out there?
I don't mind if you ask. I'm sure they're going to want a public hearing.
You've seen the changes for that portion. It includes the one-story homes. It includes the driveways that are interior and not onto that busy street. Potentially busy street. You see the widening of the parking spaces in the home so that they can park tandem. Do we need a public hearing? What?
Right.
Okay.
We don't want to be discussing something that's new.
Okay. So new stuff according to proposal does, correct me if I'm wrong, it deals with 55 and you're older. It deals with the reduced size of the homes along the west side, I think. And it deals with additional consideration for cars coming out of those parking lots, not onto that busy street. Those are the new things. Is that correct? And the amenity areas that down in the corner. Those would be the only things we could have a public hearing about. How far are the houses?
What was the question?
How far are the houses from the fence in Horizons West?
It would be 10 foot.
That's what the zoning requires is
10
10
foot.
feet. No.
Is a new proposal.
And they would stay single level. They wouldn't be they would be single level
Would the rest be
homes.
single level?
What's that?
Not
Would the
necessarily.
rest of the homes be single
No,
level?
just what they're saying is I thought it was 110, but I'm seeing 111.
Well, it's one.
Yeah, 110 through 118, 19, that back row. So the whole back row would be guaranteed to stay single level.
And you want to sell two-story homes with living on the up to senior citizens, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what they're saying.
I don't see what, I don't. see
I'm not-
what you're trying to say.
Well, thank you. It's not a public hearing. That would be a marketing decision for those folks.
I don't think the changes are public hearing stuff,
Substantial.
but I think we do need a final ruling.
And that's what I'm saying. Generally speaking, what Council Turk said, that's generally has been our approach. And that is if what was taken as comments at the public hearing from any party interested, that the most change that has been done from that public hearing is consistent with what was discussed at the public hearing, so that in effect, a public hearing would add nothing to that discussion, then there is no point for a public hearing because you add nothing to it. So again, the decision is based on what you all did at the public hearing on this part of the development.
One question for the developer, what about the trail portion that we've talked about? I see that as part of this particular piece of the project. Would that be finished on out to 300?
That's going to be in conjunction with the outfall line for your storm drain. It may go so that trailhead may go just to the amenity area for right now, unless Public Works wants us to run that outfall line with this phase. There's a lot going up Bonnie Lane, a lot of, actually Bella Vista's whole storm drain system is underneath Bonnie Lane.
Well, you'd have to at least run that portion.
Yeah, but when
Right, oh yeah.
When to tie into this piece?
You'd run into that, you'd go into that piece, but running that trail all the way out, we're working with Public Works on that, on which phase we run that outfall line. It's a big
When
line.
you're finally here collecting enough there to.
Right.
So
There's
this
quite a
phase here
bit.
will dump into what's existing,
Right.
at least until you have to upsize it.
That's right. At some point, that will,
So that trail will trigger with.
with the line, you wouldn't want to put that in and then run a line,
No,
you'd
certainly wanna go
destroy
tear it
the,
out, yeah.
yeah. That's right.
Okay, that answers my question.
Mhm.
So I personally like the changes that have happened here. It fits the piece, in my opinion, that where it sits. To me, that they've worked with the concerns of the neighbors and addressing that. So personally, I wouldn't be opposed to what I'm seeing in this single phase. Barring any other concerns, I don't know.
Well, it looks like the additional conditions are the 55 and
Correct.
older, the trail system, whatever condition we want to put on the trail system. The 55 and older, the 1-story along the west side. And then our next motion will deal with the short term.
In the driveway.
Yeah,
And
making sure
the
that
driveways are-
That it-
the
that
width
it's at
of the
least spelled out
driveways,
now,
yeah.
Because we do have that ordinance we got to deal with, or we got to change our own ordinance.
Yeah, and we're
No, I
not going
think
to.
that's.
I don't think, because I think they need not to be doing tandem parking in order to use his
Correct.
facility.
I would agree with that.
So that's how wide, 18 minimum?
Yes. Sounds like you're ready for a motion.
I'm ready for a motion. Are you folks ready to make a proposal?
Well, let's put it on the table and see what happens to it.
Well, there's one point of clarification that the applicant wants to delve into, and I probably am going to invite him up. I'm not going to butcher this thing, and I'd rather you ask it the way you want, Mr. Howcroft. So I'm going to invite you up about the quote unquote adult community. So I think we need to clarify that maybe before you go into your motion and stuff. So
Stephen Howcroft. What we'd like to do is market this as an adult community, just as Brio has done. There are certain federal laws that you have to comply with when you market it as a 55 and older community. So we would like to be able to market it for adults only and not restrict it to 55 and older.
So explain to me what that means. If you market it as an adult community, what does that mean when you say we don't restrict it to 55 and older?
Well,
I understand the
what
federal
happens?
laws and some of those things, but
What happens is you're aware that we have a phase over in Brio that we're doing now. What happens is no one buys there because there's no kids there. They wouldn't even dare take their kids to the pool, you know. Even I've never seen a kid at their pool. All of the homes, because everybody knows it's marketed as an adult community, that's all that buys there. But some of them are not 55 or older, and we would like not to have that restriction that you got to be 55 and older to buy there. Just as Brio has done.
Do you have to be 55 and older or an adult to live there?
To live in a 55 and
Well,
older.
you're saying
community.
55 and older or adults to buy there.
Yeah.
Do you have to be an adult to live there?
I have a 19-year-old who's technically an adult, so.
He is technically, yeah.
yeah, I guess that's what I want to make sure of is
I-
what
I'm-
does adult,
Yeah.
what does adult mean?
Yeah.
When we market adult communities, that mean, okay, you're 18, you're an
Yeah.
adult.
You know, you look at Brio and like I say, the entire project is pretty much adults. Are there any kids there? I've never seen one, but does it mean it's illegal for them to be there? I don't think so.
I know at one time, and I don't know what their signage is now, but at one time it said adult community, a 55 and over.
And that's what Sun River is.
Yeah, Sun River is
So
because they have met all the federal requirements and they have the amenities. You have to meet certain requirements and have certain amenities and go through the process of qualifying the project. And we're just not big enough to do that, I don't believe. To tell you the truth, I haven't even made application, but we just don't want to get in a situation where down the road somebody says, hey, you committed to 55 and older and you got someone in there that's 50.
I'm saying we need to define that we're talking about an adult or a 55 and older community, not who buys the house.
We understand, and that's the way we would market it. I just don't want somebody coming back later and say, hey, you didn't do what you agreed to do. Somebody bought in there and he's only 50, you know?
I have less of a concern with somebody 50 versus a young family of 25.
Well, if you got
in
kids,
there,
yeah,
you know.
the kids are a different matter.
That's
And-
exactly where
yeah.
I like to say, to
Yeah.
me, 50, 55, it's more the type of activities that happen
Yeah.
with families versus adults.
Sure.
The problem is there's been so much discussion in previous meetings about starter homes or you know, introductory type of homes
Yeah.
into the market. Well, you know, obviously nobody here wants to say, okay, we're representing doing this, and then, oh, well, sorry,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
We're,
Well, I just wanted to kind of make that clarification. If you state it's got to be 55 and older, I just don't want to have a problem down the road if someone wants to buy it, it's 50, you know.
What we do is
That's why I think the motion, if we want to put that condition in there, that we follow whatever the ratio is that the state puts on what a 55 and older would be. We don't have to maybe follow all the, the cross T's and dotted I's on all this other, if it, they say a 55 has to have this, that, and the other. We're just going to say we want to follow the ratio of 55 and older. So if it's 85 to 15%, that 50-year-old could be part of that 15%, and the rest of them. That's, I think, what I'd rather go to, if that's amenable for everybody, is that we want to do that, is that whatever the ratio is on a 55, that these guys can be adult community, but they will follow the ratio as a 55 and older as per state statute or whatever, and
So
that's part of your PUD.
What's the requirement? You say there's amenities that are required by Brio and Sun River. What are those? What's that requirement?
Well, obviously, if it's an adult community, we're going to want different amenities. That's why we decided to just do this phase rather than the whole thing. If this becomes an entire adult community, rather than having two pools, we'll want to have a clubhouse, because older people, they want to meet together and play cards and things of that nature. So the amenities changed. So we felt like we wanted to just address this first phase, see how it goes, then come back and then address the second phase based upon how the first phase turned out. I think it gives you more flexibility. It gives us more flexibility.
So if you decide to put a pool in there, you've room to do that. If you decide to put a clubhouse in there, you've room to do that.
No, we would still put it in this area.
Why don't you start in that area then?
Yeah, it just isn't financially feasible. We want to start at the lower end and work up.
Would the adult community be able to use these amenities?
Sure. In fact, it may be that the whole entire project turns out to be an adult project, and all of the amenities will be for the adults.
We
But,
lost our affordable housing, didn't we?
one of the concerns we have is all the demographics we've done, and all of the demographics that they've done in St. George, which we're familiar with, indicate that the real demand and the real need right here are workers. People that come to do the jobs. And all of those people are families. So we've had a concern about that all along. We understand where the people come from, but the families that will come have to live somewhere. So we thought, well, let's try this first phase. We'll try it as adults, and then we can look at it as a group in the second phase and just go from there.
Thanks, Steve. Any questions for him? Additional?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions for Steve, but I do have a comment. I just think the discussion about 55 and older is new tonight. And I think that warrants a public hearing. That's just my 2 cents.
I will mention too that the term significant facilities and service, which was a requirement under the Fair Housing Act, was actually eliminated. It's no longer a requirement under the Fair Housing Act for 55 and older. And there is adult community does not necessarily qualify under the Fair Housing Act. It's an exempted 55 and older.
What do you mean by that?
That means that it has to be implemented. You have to allow for fair housing. Exemption is for 55 and older. There's a threshold requirement for 55 and older. So it's an exemption under the Fair Housing Act, which means you can't discriminate against, which technically you're doing when you don't allow children to come in. But there's an exemption under the Fair Housing Act, but the threshold has to be met. Used to be one of the thresholds was a significant facilities and services, as is mentioned, there was a requirement. That has now been removed from the Fair Housing Act. That is not a requirement, but there still is a standard. But the Fair Housing Act makes it very clear, though, that just defining as adult community does not exempt you from under the 55 and under the adult community, the 55 and older, from still treating everyone under the Fair Housing Act. There's no exemption for adults.
So it's only for 55.
The exemption is for 55, and there's a criteria that has to do with 100% of the occupants, and it's actually housing for older persons. It's not even called that. HOPA, yeah. 100% of the occupants have to be 62 or older, or 80% of the occupants must be 55 or older. That's really the standard under HOPA. But yeah, much deeper in the federal law, it'll be completely confusing.
And we don't enforce that. I mean, that's, it's just not a law that we enforce.
Well, all right. Anybody want to take a stab at it? Or not take a stab at it?
I'll make a motion just so we can have some action, make a decision one way or the other rather than sitting here and look at each other. I'm going to make the motion that we approve this phase one that has been, as we're looking at it tonight, with the added addition to our PUD wording that lots 110 through 119 are to remain single story, that all of the lots have at least a 18-foot by 20-foot driveway.
Trail.
Well, the trail will be addressed on that. That will, if the trail actually goes in as the storm drain system goes in, the trail will go in as part of that storm drain system going on out.
And then it's actively marketed as.
And it's actively marketed as an adult community.
Adult, no, 55. Didn't you just tell us we have to have 55 to have conditions?
Well, I mean, the issue is they don't get any exemption. So basically there can be a violation, a discrimination claim filed against them. And we could recognize that under an adult community that technically they need to open it up. It doesn't allow them the exemption of no children.
The adult doesn't.
So 55, so 55 and over would.
Well, and because the prior applications were the whole project, it probably needs to be stated in there that this only pertains to Bella Vista West.
Well, that's what I said.
And
As
the
is,
entire rest of the project.
yeah, as is, and I hope in my motion I put that in is only the phase one is represented here tonight. The rest of the project is null and void.
Can I just help and maybe part of your motion? We probably want to keep all these conditions, add the ones you've added. But the one I'm worried about that we probably don't need at this time is the 1100 East. Because we probably still want to keep those conditions of the others because it's standard stuff we like to put in all of them. And I'm adding, of course, chicken scratched in the rest of them, but I.
So 1100 East wouldn't be a requirement on this
At a future
particular
date.
one.
Yeah, we'll just have to say, I just scratched number 10 right now because.
So Bella Vista has a requirement, they can only go to so many residences before that second outlet. But then this is feeding onto the same inlet. So you've effectively doubled
Well,
what we've been requiring.
I wish it was, yeah, black. It's not as black and white as that. I see exactly where you're going. It's not that Bella Vista Drive can't handle it. It's that when you get the distance from Telegraph going down Bella Vista Drive all the way up into Bella Vista, that's why their second one was needed to come back to get back onto the 60+ foot Bella Vista Drive. So it's not Bella Vista Drive that's the concern about the traffic. It was the length going all the way up into Bella Vista subdivision itself needed that secondary one versus just the one that went through the gate. Does that make sense? They're kind of tied, but they're not.
Well, and to make what you said really clear, 1100 East will come into play for any other approvals. It just isn't for this one.
We will address that at the.
So I guess I would add to my motion that we would take in all these conditions minus number 10, the 1100 East, which is not affected with this particular small piece. That's my motion.
Second the motion.
I do have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Nice and nay, but I'd like to say that I have a problem with, as our legal counselor said, that the density, and I think it needs to be scrutinized a little further we got this thing 12 hours ago and and I just don't think we've had time to digest it or the neighbors to look at it either. So mine votes nay.
Belliston, nay.
Ranger, aye.
Ivy, nay.
All right, that is denied 3-2. That motion is denied 3-2, sorry.
It doesn't mean one.
Well, you didn't approve that motion. There may be other possible.
Other motions.
You might. It wasn't the same as a motion to disapprove of that. Either way.
Well, then I move that we justify it, table it for 2 more weeks. I don't know. I need some advice from the council whether that should include an additional hearing.
I guess that's what I would ask, is the council, are those that voted nay voting because you want to have another hearing or because you don't like the project?
Or because the council night.
I've had some heartache.
You have more.
Like, I tried to bring up the other area. If that was before me, I'd probably motion that approve it. You know, or if it was some of the apartment area, that I would make a motion to approve that. But what's before us is this area here that I just think needs to be reworked, especially given the fact that they're going to be right behind this seeking overnight rental. Because based on what we've required on overnight rentals in the past, this doesn't cut it. And so, you know,
See,
that other area.
I'm the other way around, but those are the ones I have a lot more heartburn over than I do this little area.
Yeah.
But that's why we sit here. So I guess that's the reason I asked that, is based on what type of motion you'd like to see next. If you want to go to a public hearing, then the motion should say we want to bring it back to public hearing. Otherwise, we say, no, we want to deny it and start over again.
The question is stated easily, somewhat, is that if you feel you need to go to the public hearing, then you need to ask each other if that's what you want to do, or table. But the tabling would be, is that just for more time to consider what's been given to you? And then I would just, that's why I was showing you the 2 original proposals that really this area hasn't changed, other that it has improved with, what was sought for. Single stories.
Not that I don't want anybody to, any of the public to have to say so, but I don't see that another public hearing is going to have significant different discussion on this over what was presented a month ago. So
that was my exact feeling as well.
For me, it's not the public hearing. It's
not necessarily what I heard Council Nyson say either.
Well, he said we just got the information. Yeah, we just got the information yesterday.
So if that's the case, you just want to table for another 2 weeks to reevaluate.
Right.
If we want to do that, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we table it.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Well, the next council meeting is
It'll be
December 13th.
Is what
We don't need to notice.
We don't need to notice it up. It's just a table.
it'll be the 21st. Is that Tuesday, right?
I guess the question is still for you, Denise, though, is what does that agenda look like? Does that agenda have capacity?
We'll make capacity.
We can make capacity. That's why you're elected here, to be here till midnight. Make these.
So there was a motion, was it seconded?
Right.
Yeah.
And clarify that, okay, make sure we come on.
Let's restate that.
Just make a motion. We could table it to November, 21st?
21st, okay.
Okay.
Second by Council Nyson. Okay.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Nice night.
Turek, nay.
All right, We'll table it. The vote was 4-1.
With that said, and probably the applicants will agree, we probably want to table the next item because they run somewhat together hand in hand. And
You've got no project to work with, so.
until the PUD's done, then it isn't. So that's, if the applicant's okay, staff would recommend that we table Z-17-27 to the same date of the 21st of November.
Part of the reason why I wanted to do the table is because this overlay, either the overlay gets denied and we carry the design forward as a 55 plus with no overlay, or it gets redesigned to take in the overlay. You see what I mean? The way that this parcel is laid out is not, it doesn't take into the elements that we've required of other stuff, of other projects.
Yeah, I mean, I just carry forward the discussion. I can't really say for sure how I would vote, but I would tell you that I'm very reluctant to call it a 55 and older community and have a short-term overlay.
Well, there has been discussions of getting a niche in the market of having a 55 and older short-term project to put out there, that folks who are that age would.
I don't think that's a bad product to put out there, but I still want to look at it in the context of, you know, we have the transient traffic. I mean, I go back to the other parcel on the site. If we're requiring amenities, I like to require the amenities on the front end, not the back end. You know, because it always seems that things change over time, and next thing you know,
now are there
promises and they never materialize.
Right. Now, are there, since we are tabling, you know, if we do that, are there specific amenities you want to see with that? I'm just saying because we haven't specifically made it a requirement that, you know, each one have a pool, even though most of them have been proposing that.
We've been kind of requiring it when we know it's going to a family type of a.
When it's the family type, yeah.
If it's an age restricted, then we have, I don't know that we would need to, but anyway.
That's food for thought on that because we haven't had this kind of an animal
And
before.
for them too, because they're going to
Right.
want to market this to some people who will take advantage of it, so.
But like I say, in discussions, I think that's quite a niche that nobody has touched that I'm aware of for vacation rental 55 and older.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
All right.
So I guess we still want to go for the table, or if that's what the council wants to
Motion
do.
we table the overnight rental.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second.
Rick, aye.
Nice night.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
IBI.
All right, we'll table that one also. Item C has been requested to be tabled also
Just to keep in the mood of tabling.
to the December
You
13th.
need a motion to table 10C.
Per request for the third one will be December 13th.
By the applicant's request.
By the
December 13th. It's,
Not you.
no. Everybody leaving's the 21st, two weeks from tonight on those items. Okay, this one is December 13th.
I'll make the motion that we table zone change request Z-17-31 to December 13th.
Second.
We can't or cannot do that.
Hold
Denise.
on for your vote. What?
We've talked to the school district there.
Well, if we have to table it in December, we can do that. I'd rather put it on table, there
Exactly
on
right.
on the agenda.
Exactly right.
And then if we have to, we can still bump it.
So we had a
another
motion
time.
and a second, correct? Who seconded that? Did anybody second that?
Did I
Okay.
second it?
Councilman Belliston.
Okay.
IBI.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Nice night.
Rick, aye.
Okay, thank you. Item 11, resolution. Consideration to approve a resolution addressing the disposition of firearms, excuse me, and authorizing use of the funds to the public interest, namely police department / law enforcement related purposes. Chief Keith.
Thank you, Council, Mayor. I think this was put in your packet, is that correct? We had that to view. The reason we're doing this is to try to allow, rather than just having these firearms destroyed, there's an avenue to have them sold to a licensed firearms dealer who can then remarket them to appropriate community members who can purchase them and then give us a credit to be utilized towards future purchase of firearms related equipment that we can use in our department. That's what we're asking for here. Council has helped us draft this in reference to the legality side of it. And the only thing that and I'm okay either way on this, is under the third paragraph there where it talks about the Exhibit A. And I have no problem if you want us to bring this to you each time we do it, if you approve it, each time that we do it, maybe once every 18 months or 2 years, depending on the amount that we get accumulated. Or if you want to leave the exhibit part out, that would just give us the authority to do it as needed. So I'm good either way. And I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Chief, would they be disposed to a local or?
No, we don't have anybody local here that would do that, but there are other agencies around that some other departments utilize, and it's worked out. And these are all weapons that have gone through all of the processes to be turned back to the owner if possible, or through county attorney processes that we have in place for all of our evidence disposal, and they've all been gone through that and approved that way.
Forfeiture or something like
Yeah.
So Chief, there's three categories, best I can tell also, looking at the other two. The ones that have been turned in, those that have been voluntarily surrendered to the police department.
Right.
Under certain laws we have. For
The ones that we've
domestic
seized,
stuff.
yeah.
Others are gonna be those that legally shouldn't have them, or can't get them, shouldn't have them returned to them, and others are just evidence for prosecution cases, no longer needed as evidence.
And-
Each of them for which nobody had responded to the notice
Right.
given.
Either unknown who the owner is, or,
We have a bunch of these that you're sitting on right now,
yeah, about 80 of them.
about 80.
80? So we now own them. So do we have to notice to dispose of an asset because they're now ours?
That's not the act,
That's
the
not,
public
yeah.
purpose the chief is requesting. So under the state law, the request is that, so those weapons that qualify to be able to be disposed of, or, and whatever form of disposal is being requested in this case, is to a federally licensed dealer
Right.
who's legally allowed to do it, and then to receive a credit back of some sort, either to use for the police department and for whatever it needs for,
Yeah.
probably for weapons use, for some of its own weapons, so they're not spending public funds on it, but it's specifically for that.
And the other option is that they're disposed of through ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Bureau, and they actually just destroy them. That's what we've been doing with them.
So this way you do get a little return
Right.
back out of them, where other, obviously.
The other way, they're just destroyed, yeah.
And this is not a booked asset. This is
No.
not a booked asset by the city that we purchased.
That's what I was going.
So,
So-
I guess my only other thought is, or concern possibly, would be, number one, that you receive fair compensation versus the credit. I mean, do we give them away for nothing and then we're locked into a credit to buy at a substantially higher price, basically, where, but I guess a little bit's better than nothing at all.
Yeah,
but-
the resolution states it's a fair price, and we wouldn't be necessarily purchasing firearms for our department, but we would be purchasing firearms related needs, equipment, slings, additional magazines, things like that we have to replace on a regular basis that this would help with.
The only other question I have is, would some of these guns be guns that we just would not like in any community?
Those would not be.
Those would not
So,
be sold.
yeah, anything that's illegal or anything like that, we would just send to
Machine
ATF.
guns.
Yeah.
What's that?
We
thing
can't-
that
we
one
can't-
Guy used
Bump
the
stock
terms,
guns,
the bump stocks. Yeah, the bump stocks.
And we cannot give anything that's illegally, that's
that's not
to be illegally
illegal, but they
purchased.
should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, go back real quick to the Exhibit A.
Yes.
What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, the only difference
I'm
would be under, where just simply removing the first part of that where it says attached to this resolution as Exhibit A is a list of, and just have it simply say firearms and or firearms related property, which is found on down through there. That's just meaning that if we leave the exhibit in there, we just have to bring it back to you every time we do it, because that list will change. So it's an itemized list of the firearms that
I'd
we're,
rather take the Exhibit A out of it then.
that's what we were,
We just.
That's what I would
honestly, We
propose.
just took it from another sample of
Yeah.
other communities, some had it. And so Chief and I didn't get, I've been gone for the last few days, but that's how I put it in there for him to recommend. It still is a recommendation to you guys.
that would just simply
Do our
prevent us from
neighboring
having to.
communities do this?
I don't know if any down here specifically are doing it or not, but there are agencies in the state that are doing it.
I'll make a motion that we approve a resolution addressing the disposition of firearms and authorizing use of the funds to the public interest, namely police department, law enforcement related purposes, with I guess the addition that we remove the language of Exhibit A in the ordinance.
Second.
Motion and a second.
IBI.
Granger, nay.
Fellas and I.
Nice and I.
Turek, aye.
Okay, that passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Item 12, report. Anything to report from assigned committees? Okay, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to show a couple of the projects that we've got going on. We've got our Red Cliffs tank, of course, it's scheduled to be done this year. We're working on some easement issues with the school institutional trust land on that issue. So that's begun the process. Stormwater, the two projects in the downtown area have been completed other than the punch list items. We're working on punch list items right now on those projects. The Washington Parkway, this of course is the Parkway extension up to the Green Springs area, working on some dedication plat stuff for that area. Power, the Parkway substation, the cement work is, concrete work has started on the substation up there, the substation site, and the fabrication for the transformer has begun. That's a big process and kind of an interesting process. They build those, of course, at their location and then ship them out here. We've completely reconducted the Buena Vista feeder line, which was a great project that kind of waited. I think I mentioned to it a few months ago. We were waiting until the loads dropped so that we could shift around when we did that. I guess while I'm on this, I'll just, so just to kind of update the council on our outage, I thought that it's an interesting issue, and our crews did a fantastic job, and I was actually I thought the community expressed really well to the appreciation for the crews. But as you all know, we had an automobile that struck and completely took off the transmission pole. This was a transmission pole, not a distribution pole, which is thicker and bigger because it carries a heavier load. And this is a fairly not an old pole either. So we're not talking about a pole that had already. So number one, why you couldn't do any more damage to the car. But we're grateful that the driver was okay. But it was pretty amazing where it sheared it right off and dropped it. And what happened is the primary line dropped into the secondary line. and hit that. And so of course you immediately, that's a 69 kV line dropped into the primary or the secondary line. And so of course the city went black because of the primary line. First step for the city crews in those cases is to begin to reroute power through different substations. That typically doesn't take a long period of time, maybe an hour to an hour and a half, and then start bringing the city up, and they have to do it in sections. So kind of like a breaker panel, you can't flip it all on at one time. So that'll take another hour or so. The homes adjacent or near the power pole were longer because the power pole was needed to be replaced in order to restore their power, and that took about 2.5 hours to get the pole up. Then the other thing that we found that we didn't know is because everybody was really quite kind, and they assumed because we had been posting out there that the power was being brought up and that we were working on it, and we were posting about every hour on social media. People were saying, well, they're working on it. But what had happened is when that primary line hit that secondary line and overcharged it, we blew fuses, about 5 to 6 fuses in isolated sections around the city. So they did exactly what they should have done. But the problem is we can't identify them. And so people were waiting, knowing that the crews were working on it and not calling in. So we're fixing that. So in the future, when we have this, we will always make sure that when we perceive that the power is fully charged and we put another social media post out, we will indicate if you are still without power, please notify. And then we can check that. I thought the crews did a fantastic job that evening. Most of the community was on by about 9:30. But like I said, there were pockets, and the crews worked till 6 a.m. the next day, but there were pockets that we didn't even realize in some cases until about 5 the next morning that the fuses needed to be replaced. So I didn't plan on saying that, but it was a good project. The other thing I would mention this is one of the things we have done, and this was actually a fine test run for us, is we have structured all of the intersections now to be able to take portable generators. And what that does, it relieves our law enforcement from having to deal with traffic control. Yeah. So we actually powered up, and they took a little time. We did hit Green Springs first. We tried to get a hold of UDOT. UDOT was not responding, so we actually powered up their own spooling underneath I-15, and all of it worked pretty well. We had a couple little portable generator issues that we had to work with that we borrowed from other departments, but other than that, I think it worked really well, and we were able to relieve the law enforcement of traffic control fairly quickly with those portable generators and the way we reconfigured the substate or the intersections. Leisure Services Project. The boilers project is where we're at on the boilers project. Is we've got a stormwater line. As you know, we're working on the land swapping up there with Ball Ventures, the group up there. But there is a stormwater line that kind of impacts that piece of property that we'd be swapping. And so we're having discussions with Public Works right now on the cost that it would take to move that. And then of course that would be just all calculated in the compensation of the swap and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of where that sits right now. The Veterans Park, and I think Mayor will probably announce, of course, Veterans Day, and I'll let him do that, but we'll have it kind of cleaned up here for Veterans Day. And but we did get some pricing, some very good pricing on both the pavilion and Pagoda. Actually from the group that kind of builds them, come down and install. So we've been working with a local contractor to get pricing, because as you know, we didn't get competitive pricing. So we're working with a local contractor, Watts Construction. And Watts Construction is working up the numbers to do the flat work, and then let this company, the sub company, just come down and do the installation of the prefab. And then Watts would work on the bathrooms as well. Right now, the numbers we're seeing that we're starting to get both from Watts, and certainly with regards to the numbers we do have with respect to the pavilion and that, are below engineers' estimates. So, but we'll ship those out as soon as we have them, so the council can.
So we're back down where we need to be instead of 800 to 1 million.
We are, and part of it was because, well, I'll say it. One, there's a great partner there, and when we reached out and said, this is our challenge, They're, as you know, pretty busy as well. So they have a great relationship with the city and said we'd be willing to work with that. And then the pricing that came out of Salt Lake from the company to come and put in the pavilion was really good pricing as well. And so, but I'll get you those numbers out to you with respect to that. In early January, we do plan on bringing back to you the costs and the plans for, this may be one that's come off your list, the Green Springs Detention Basin. You know, we talked about grassing that and turning that into a usable field. We're working on drafting that up 1st of January with respect to that. And then the final item is we've received one bid. We got 2 that are pending with regards to the columbarium. I think you're the columbarium guy. I think you're the oldest here that is probably getting
Looking for a place for my final resting place. Yes. Got to hurry to get that done.
The bid, we're looking at bids.
Yes.
We're looking at bids right around $26,000, and that'll just be one columbarium. We have space for 3, but we'll install the first one but we'll get the pricing. We've got some other bids coming in. And so I think that's it, Mayor.
Give you a drawer.
Okay. Just a reminder, Friday is the Veterans Day celebration, and we have a car for the council. Those of you that would like to participate in that.
Are you
That's
throwing
11.
Yeah, we're throwing candy, not like St. George. We're going to throw candy, and hopefully you know how to throw it far. But, I think the parade starts at 10, doesn't it?
I think 11:11.
11:11 is when it rolls.
And then have the
11
program.
o'clock.
Then have the
There's
program
11.
after that. Okay, so if you get there about 10 to 11, that'd be great. So I know that St. George is bringing their crew over, so I think we need to be represented. I would invite you to. Anything else? There is a need to go to a closed session to discuss purchase, exchange, or lease of property. So I would entertain a motion that we move to that.
So moved.
Seconded.
Turk, aye.
Nice night.
Carlos and I.
Granger, aye.
Hooters, what are you doing there? Oh, I know.